Hello and welcome back to Thea's Christmas Villages. Today I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint the two cottages that my grandson printed for me. There are two additional cottages to the little one that I finished, and I'll show you that one later. And I'm going to show you what sort of paint to use, what sort of paintbrush to use, and all those lovely little things to make these cottages look wonderful. So stay tuned. Okay, since yesterday I got a little bit more painting done. I just wanted to show you the completed cottage that I finished a week or two ago. And there are some things about it I really like. I love the roof. I love the way the roof turned out. And that's done a lot by dry brushing the effects of the little bit of snow here. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't that difficult. It wasn't that complicated. The hardest part was to get these little strips of brown on accurately. Now, you don't want to look too closely, because if you start looking too closely, you'll see all the mistakes. But mistakes are not visible when they're on a diorama and when you're looking at it from a distance. So all in all, I'm really happy with this little cottage. I made a few errors. I didn't finish the base properly, but in effect, it's not all that visible. So this was the first one I received and finished, and I'm going to use this one as a type of template. It'll show me how to do the others. Yesterday I started on these two cottages, this particular one, and I started with the base, just painting the base, and I've dry brushed it since and accented it. I've painted the little grates gray. I've put a little bit snow cap on the windows and on the bottom bricks. Did some dry brushing as well. I first painted gray and then I dry brushed with white. Now, there is a door and I painted the door brown. And this was relatively easy to do without making obvious errors. And on top of this one goes this. Sits on top. This was a little harder to paint. Again, these brown strips are really difficult to get right. However, if you use the right size of a paintbrush, and I've got two of them here, these are really tiny. They're numbers 6, I believe. No, number 2 and the square one is a number 6. And it comes in handy in some areas, like the light brown areas. And this one is a 2, and this one is the one I use for the brown beams, and also the snow caps. Again, I did the little grates gray. And the nice thing about it is when you make an error, like for instance, when you put the brown, dark brown paint onto the light brown or the light brown onto the dark brown, you can go back once it's dry. It has to be dry. You can go back and correct it. Now this here is a little bit of snow in the corner. I'm just going to leave that. That looks quite natural. I wanted to maybe put it all the way up, but I thought, no, I better not. I'll just leave it in the corners there. It won't be that visible when you've got the roof on. So that's this one. And there's the door. I haven't got the roof done yet. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the roof. The other one was a little bit more complicated. It's a larger piece. And it's also very detailed on the inside. It's giving me a little bit of concern in that how I'm going to light this one up when I've got it on the diorama. However, I've done all the brickwork. I've painted the little fence. The fence is brown, light brown with a little bit of snow on top. These pillars have all been dry brushed, but once they're painted with gray, because it was a black unit to begin with, it was all in this black filament. It was quite easy to paint so that the accents are still there. But this is actually a gaming piece, which I quite liked. I haven't quite finished the fire paint, the outside of the fireplace. I'm going to be painting that different colors of brown. It's a little bit of a different type of piece, but I thought it would go well with my village. And then on top of that goes this. Now, how do you know how to fit that on? Well, there's some holes. I don't know if you can see that. There's a hole there and there's a hole there. And on this corresponding piece, there's a little pick here and a little pick here. So these two picks go into these two holes. Once you've got one, you can swivel it around so that it fits the other one. And then it just fits right on top. Now, I'm going to be gluing them together. Once I've figured out how to actually make it so that I can light this one up, because there's an outlet from the back, but I would have to string the light through the little doorway on the inside. This piece was much, much harder to paint for some funny reason. I've had a lot of issues with this one. I've corrected it and repainted it and corrected it. But once I get the little white strips on the windowsills and on, well, maybe not the windowsills so much, but on these areas here, I'll put a little white strip for snow. I think that will clean it up a little bit. See, so if you go close, you can see what a messy job it is. But if you go far away, the further away it goes, the better it looks. I quite like the look of this one. You can look right through it. And once it gets the roof on, that will be really interesting. Now the roof has two picks and two holes, two corresponding holes. So you put one pick in one hole and swivel it around. My grandson was a little bit upset because on the corners of this roof, I don't know if you can see it, there's gargoyles. And the gargoyles have two horns. And this gargoyle lost a horn when it came off the printer. One of the horns fell off. And now he gave me the horn, but there's absolutely no way I can put that horn back on. I'm just not steady enough of hand. So once I have the roof on and the roof's painted, I think then the paint job will look a little better. This is a little bigger piece. So now I'm going to do the roofs. I'm going to show you how to get all the effects of the roof so that the roof will actually look like this. Now this cottage also came in pieces, came in 3 pieces, the base, the main cottage, and the roof. And I actually glued them together. And that's what I'll be doing once all the painting is complete and dry. I will glue them all together. So this is the roof as it goes on to this cottage. And there's no picks per se. Just have to fiddle with it until it fits on correctly. It comes in 2 pieces. And it's quite attractive. I think it's adorable when the roof's on. It comes in 2 pieces. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe the roof was too big to print in 1 piece. But in any case, once this roof is all done and looking like this roof, it will look terrific. Quite happy with that. Oh, I just get so excited when I see these little buildings. It's very medieval looking. Oh, almost Tudor as well. It can fit in as a Tudor building as well. So these roofs have to be painted in this brown orange color. Now, I've seen these buildings with a blue roof. You could make a blue roof on it, but I think I'd like to have it more standard, to have everything looking the same. So we'll do it the same as this one. So we've already discussed what paint brushes to use. I'll be using the little bigger one here on the roof part. I have a variety of paint brushes, and I've ordered sets from the internet where you can get all sorts. I may use a square one to help paint. I've also got some paint pens for really tricky parts, and I may touch up some of the areas afterwards with a paint pen. But I find the paint pen, even though this is a fine nib, and I got these off Amazon, the paint pens are quite large. See the nib, how large that is? So it's not as precise as I would have liked. This is considered to be a fine point. Oh, this is a medium point. I thought I had ordered fine point, not medium. But the problem with this as well is these are not that expensive. This is the brown. Now, I don't know if you can see that color, but it's certainly not the same as that color. It's a green. It's almost like an olive green, and it doesn't look at all like that brown. So I'm really unhappy with this one, but because I've used it, I'm not going to send it back. That would just be wrong. So those paint pens are in case of emergency. I've got white as well that I could probably use for the snow, and I did use a little bit of on this one. So I'll do that as a finishing touch once it's all glued together and finished. But for the meantime, I think I'm going to start by using the little square brush. This is not a job that's done with big brushes. They're all done with small brushes. So now, because I don't have an orange, I have to make an orange. And I want to make an orange like this, but a little like it's got a tinge of brown to it. It's not really bright orange. It's got a tinge of brown. So we have to mix it up with different colors. Let me show you how I do that. There's yellow, and this one is a Naples yellow. Naples yellow by Liquitex. I used another brand in another video, but I also use Liquitex. I like Liquitex as well, and it's easier for me to get than the other brand. I ordered some large tubes of the other brand in white and black. So this should make an orange. I'm going to use a brush that I'm not going to paint with, just to mix it up with. Oh, it's an older brush. And mix it so that I get an orange. And you adjust it as you go along. If you see that the color is not turning into the orange you want, you add either more red or more yellow. Now, I try to use as little as possible, and I always end up with way too much paint. But as you can see, this orange is more a peach. So there's a little bit too much red in this. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow before I start adding brown. The brown will mute the color a little bit, make it not quite as bright. So I said I was going to add more yellow. And we'll see what kind of an orange I come up with this time. Well, it's just served to make it a bit lighter, that's all. but it's not as red, it's not as pink as it was. See, now I'm getting so much paint together, it's just ridiculous. I don't need that much paint. So now I'm going to add some brown. The brown will serve to make it more a terracotta. And that's the color I'm looking for, is terracotta. Because the tiles in Europe are either orange or terracotta. I like the terracotta color. And at first you think, oh dear, what have I done? It just doesn't look right at all. Oh dear. But as you mix, the more you mix, the better it gets. Although I added a little bit too much brown, I think. So this is how you end up with a great big glob of paint. See, now it's a light brown with a little orangey tinge, and I'm not quite sure that that's, well, that's pretty close. I'm going to add a little bit more red, I think. Tad red. Now it looks more like brown than anything. And just play around with it. I mean, it's only paint. When you're done with the paint, if you don't want to throw it away, and I have from the dollar store, I have these little plastic containers with sealed lids. I just put the leftover paint in little plastic containers until the next time I need that color. And they last a few days that way. You can freeze it, but I don't know what happens to paint after you've thawed it. Now, that's the color I like. It's like a terracotta brown. It's not too orange, and it's not too yellow, and it's not too red. And now I've got a great big glob of paint. So, start by using the brown paintbrush, the square paintbrush, and applying the paint. And I love it that these are made of black filament, because the black, well, if you paint it over and over and over again, the black won't show through. It will disappear. But it's really got a nice accent to it. If you're careful not to paint too thickly, you keep the black accents in the cracks. Oh, I like that. You could paint these roofs any color you want. I've seen green, I've seen blue, I've seen bright orange. It's your preference. Again, you can't make mistakes. I think I will fill in some of the black because I like that look better. So by doing it horizontally, painting horizontally, you fill in the black cracks. So there's not a lot of paint on there, but already it looks terrific. You can add more paint to it. I think I'll add a little bit more paint to it. It's a little bit dull. There we go. Now I need to do the other side. So now I've finished the roofs. I have to let them dry completely. I will be making some repairs because I did make a couple of errors. Like here, I painted onto the brown bar. So I'll be painting that over in dark brown. But in the meantime, I'm going to save this paint because if I need it again, there's no point in mixing it up again. So I'm just going to deposit it into a little container here. And I'll be able to use that in the future on other projects. It just seems like such a waste to throw all this paint away. It does wash away with water. It is safe for septic systems and for city sewers. However, being frugal, I like to save as much as I can. I have a number of these little pots now with different colors in them. I really enjoy mixing up the different colors as I need them. However, it's kind of rewarding to know that if you need the same color again on another project, similar project, that you have storage of that color. You can just take the lid off and be consistent with your colors. And like all painters, I get all kinds of paint on me. There we go. Terracotta color paint. And this will just go into the sink and get washed up. And I do my brushes again right away as well. It keeps the brushes new and clean because that's going to take a while to dry. This is actually pretty amazing. These two portals are something my grandson made for me. One is a little bit different than the other. They're a 3D printed project. These are fences, gate or walls that I've made that I'm still going to put on the bottom. I'm going to glue thumbtacks onto them so that they just fit onto the diorama and don't fall over, because they will fall over very easily. They're very light and they're in various sizes. I've got some small ones and some large ones. They're all coming tumbling down. So I got lots of those. Then I have the stone walls that my grandson printed for me, which I really like as well. They're a little more sturdy and they have a little more weight to them than these do. Then I have small tiles, the smaller ones. And they all have magnets in them. They're 3 and there's a couple 2s. They will go into places where are left. And then I have all of these dungeon tiles, all made and all with magnets. And I counted them. There's 260 here, plus what I have here. This is the little tea light that I'm going to be putting in the medieval cottages. So it will just be easy enough to take the little cottage and set it on top of the light. And I don't know if you can see the light through the door, but you can see the light shining through the little window. And each night I would just take the cottage off, lift the cottage off, turn the lights off, and the next morning I would turn the lights back on. And I plan to do that with all of the 3D printed cottages that I received from my grandson. I love that look. So cool. So in the meantime now, the roofs are completely dry. They look good. They dry a little bit darker than they go on, so they're not quite as bright orange as they were. They're a little more brownish now. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a few effects to it, and we'll begin by dry brushing on brown. to make it look a little more weathered. And I'm just going to dry brush it, which means I'm going to take a brush, put some paint on, and then take all the paint off. So we'll just take a little bit, put it on, and then dry brush it off so that there's just a very, very minimal amount of paint left on the brush. And then just lightly brush over top. And there is an effect. I mean, it's very, very hard to see, but there is an effect to that. Maybe a little more paint than that. Give it a weathered look, a little more of a weathered look. Minimal paint on your brush. We'll do the same later once this is dry with white to make it look snowy. In the meantime, I can also correct the error I made. Pick out my little tiny brushes, put some brown on it. Don't dry brush it this time, make sure that there's paint on the brush, and go over the spots where I painted over the brown. To the dry brushing. So I'll show you side by side the difference. Yeah, it adds a little bit of a different color to it. There, we'll do these two. Now, if I find that once this is dried, I can't see any difference, then I can always do it over again. I can do it a second time before I dry brush it with white for snow effects. I wonder if you can tell the difference between the one that's done and the one that isn't done. Yeah, I think you can see the difference. You wouldn't think there'd be any paint on there, but the paint glob on the saucer is getting smaller. So I must be doing it properly. This gives it a more weathered look. Now, the beige parts of the houses also, I'm going to dry brush over with brown. It gives it a little bit of an older look about it, like it's a bit stained. When it's freshly painted, it looks like it's freshly painted, and that's not what we want. So. Oh, I like that. Give it a more medieval look. There, that one's done. There we go. A little more weathered look. That's cool. So I will clean this up, come back and do a little bit of white painting. I think this dries fairly quickly when it's just airbrushed like that. And a few more touch-ups and we'll be all done.